First Contact and Challenge. The crystalline spires of Nexus Station glittered against the backdrop of nebula clouds, a testament to Vexery engineering and their dominance in this sector of space. Kellen Nash adjusted his atmosphere regulator and tried not to look impressed. As Earth's newest diplomatic envoy, appearing overawed would only reinforce the Vexery's belief that humans were primitive newcomers to the galactic stage. Kellen straightened his plain gray diplomatic uniform, a stark contrast to the ornate, scaled armor of the Vexery guards escorting him through the station's central hub. At 35, with his weathered face and calm demeanor, most assumed he was a career diplomat. Few knew of his previous life in Earth's Special Reconnaissance Division before the war, and he preferred it that way. "The War Council will see you now, human," the lead guard announced, mandibles clicking in what Kellen had learned was mild irritation. The Vexery still refused to address humans by name, a small but deliberate slight. The council chamber opened before him like the inside of a geode, walls of purple crystal that somehow absorbed sound while amplifying light. 5 Vexery counselors perched on elevated platforms, their iridescent exoskeletons gleaming. But it was the figure standing beside them that caught Kellen's attention. She was clearly Vexery, but unlike any he'd seen before. Taller, leaner, with an exoskeleton that shifted between midnight blue and deep violet depending on how the light struck it. Her compound eyes were larger, more expressive, and currently fixed on him with unmistakable disdain. "Envoy Nash," announced the Central Counselor, "you stand before the High Council of the Vexery hegemony. Beside us is Commander Zavara, decorated veteran of the Targan expansion and newly appointed liaison to your species." Kellen bowed slightly. "I'm honored to meet you all, especially Commander Zavara. Earth looks forward to strengthening our relationship with the Vexery people." A ripple of clicking, Vexery laughter, passed through the room. "Relationship?" Zavara stepped forward, her movements fluid and controlled. "Let us be clear, human. You are here because your planet's mineral resources are valuable, not because we consider you equals. Your kind has been spacefaring for less than a century. The Vexery mastered interstellar travel when your ancestors were still using stone tools." Kellen kept his face neutral. "Yet here we are, Commander. Perhaps there's something to be said for rapid adaptation." Her head tilted, a Vexery expression of challenge. "Adaptation without wisdom leads to extinction. Your species' history is littered with examples." The Central Counselor raised a clawed hand. "Enough pleasantries. Envoy Nash, Earth has requested expanded mining rights in the Epsilon sector. This is denied." Kellen had expected this. "May I ask the reason?" "The preliminary agreement has been reconsidered," another counselor interrupted. "Your extraction methods are inefficient and damaging to planetary ecosystems. Furthermore, recent human military expansion along the Orion border suggests intentions beyond simple resource gathering." This was the real issue. Earth's defense fleet had indeed grown, but only in response to increasing Vexery presence near human colonies. A classic security dilemma playing out across the stars. "Those ships are for protection, not aggression," Kellen said. "Perhaps if we established a joint oversight committee." "The human suggests cooperation," Zavara said, her tone making the word sound like a disease. "As if we would share authority with a species that still wages war against itself." Kellen felt his diplomatic mask slipping. "With respect, Commander, the Vexery-Krull conflict lasted 3 centuries and devastated dozens of worlds. No species has a monopoly on wisdom, or folly." The chamber fell silent. Mentioning the Krull War was considered taboo. Zavara's exoskeleton darkened to near black, a sign of intense emotion. "You speak of things you cannot understand, human," she said, her voice dangerously soft. "Your kind reads history files and thinks it comprehends the cosmos." "Then help me understand," Kellen replied, meeting her compound gaze. "Isn't that the purpose of your liaison position?" The Central Counselor made a sharp gesture. "Perhaps a demonstration would be instructive. Commander Zavara, you've requested field testing for the new neural interface systems. Take the human envoy with you to the training grounds. Show him how the Vexari prepare for the challenges of space. Zavara's mandibles flared in what Kellen recognized as surprise. Counselor Thrax, humans lack the neural complexity to. This is not a suggestion, Commander. The counselor's tone brooked no argument. The envoy wishes to understand. Let him. Kellen realized he'd just become a pawn in some internal Vexari political game. But refusing would only confirm their belief in human weakness. I'd be honored to observe Vexari training methods, he said carefully. Zavara's compound eyes flickered with what might have been amusement. Observe? No, human. You will participate. 3 hours later, Kellen found himself in a vast hexagonal chamber within the lower levels of Nexus Station. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, and the floor was sectioned into irregular platforms of varying heights. 20 Vexari warriors stood at attention as Zavara explained the simple exercise. The neural harnesses will connect each participant to the simulation matrix, she said, indicating the sleek devices being distributed. Your mind will perceive the challenges as real, though your body remains here. The objective is to reach the center platform before your opponent disables you. Kellen examined the harness, an elegant crown of metal and crystal. And if I refuse? Then you confirm what we already believe about human courage, Zavara replied. Choose your opponent, Envoy Nash. The Vexari warriors clicked their mandibles expectantly. They were all larger than him, their exoskeletons bearing the marks of countless battles. Choosing any of them meant certain defeat and humiliation. I choose you, Commander, Kellen said quietly. The clicking stopped abruptly. Zavara's exoskeleton shifted through several colors before settling on a deep, royal purple. Interesting, she said finally. Do you seek to embarrass yourself completely, or do you believe I will show mercy because of your diplomatic status? Kellen smiled for the first time since arriving. Neither, Commander. I simply believe that if I'm going to learn about the Vexari, I should learn from the best. A ripple of appreciative clicks came from the warriors. Flattery was one of the few human traits the Vexari respected. Very well, Zavara said. But know this, in the simulation, I am not bound by diplomatic protocol. The neural interface will interpret your injuries as pain, quite convincingly. I understand, Kellen replied, placing the harness on his head. It felt cool against his skin, then warm, then suddenly like it wasn't there at all. Begin interface sequence, Zavara commanded. The world dissolved around Kellen, reforming into a stark landscape of floating platforms suspended over a bottomless void. The center platform glowed with pale blue light, seemingly miles away. Zavara materialized on a platform opposite him, her exoskeleton now covered in what appeared to be battle armor that enhanced her already formidable frame. The rules are simple, her voice echoed in his mind. Reach the center or incapacitate your opponent. All mental and physical abilities are permitted. Before he could respond, she leaped, not toward him, but to a higher platform, her movement so swift it blurred. Kellen realized with a sinking feeling that the Vexari weren't just technologically advanced, they were physically superior in every way that mattered in this environment. Or almost every way. As Zavara began her methodical approach, leaping from platform to platform with lethal grace, Kellen closed his eyes and focused. If this neural interface truly connected to his mind, then perhaps. He opened his eyes and jumped. Not the cautious hop of a human under normal gravity, but the confident leap of someone who had spent years training in zero-G environments. His body responded perfectly, carrying him to a higher platform with ease. Zavara paused, her compound eyes widening slightly. Kellen smiled again. The Special Reconnaissance Division had prepared him for environments far more hostile than this simulation. The neural interface was reading those memories, those trained responses, and translating them into this virtual space. Surprised, Commander, he called out. I thought you'd studied our species thoroughly. A lucky jump, she replied, but her tone had changed. Let's see how you handle this. She raised a clawed hand, and several platforms began to shift position, creating a more challenging path. Then she charged directly at him, her speed terrifying. Kellen didn't retreat. Instead, he stepped forward and, at the last possible moment, sidestepped her charge with a pivot that would have made his zero-G combat instructor proud. Zavara's momentum carried her past him, and he used the opportunity to leap toward the center platform. Impossible, he heard her hiss as she recovered. Human reflexes are not that fast. Kellen landed on another platform, now much closer to the objective. Perhaps you should reconsider what you think you know about humans, Commander. Zavara's exoskeleton darkened to that dangerous black again. Perhaps I should stop underestimating you, Envoy Nash. The air around her seemed to shimmer, and suddenly there were 3 Zavaras leaping toward him from different directions. Some kind of vexury battle technique the interface was allowing her to use. Kellen's brief advantage was evaporating quickly. He had maybe seconds to decide, try for the center platform and likely fail, or face Zavara directly and almost certainly lose. Or perhaps there was a third option, one that might not win the exercise, but would definitely change the conversation. As the 3 Zavaras converged on his position, Kellen made his choice understanding and transformation. As the 3 Zavaras converged on his position, Kellen made a decision that would change everything. Instead of dodging or attacking, he simply stood still, arms at his sides, and closed his eyes. The simulated vexury warriors passed through him like ghosts, their attacks finding no target. Confused, they whirled around, searching. Illusions cannot harm me if I don't believe in them, Kellen said calmly, opening his eyes. That's how your neural interface works, isn't it? It reads our expectations and manifests them. The duplicates vanished, leaving only the real Zavara, her compound eyes fixed on him with new intensity. How did you deduce that so quickly? She demanded, her exoskeleton shifting to an amber hue that Kellen hadn't seen before. I've encountered similar technology, he replied, careful not to reveal too much. The difference is in how we approach it. You vexury see it as combat training. Humans initially developed it for healing trauma. For the first time, Zavara seemed genuinely curious rather than dismissive. Explain. Kellen took a cautious step forward. Neural interfaces let us revisit painful memories in controlled environments. We learned that perception shapes reality in these virtual spaces. The same principle applies here. Around them, the simulation wavered slightly, responding to their shifting focus. The platform steadied as Zavara considered his words. You are not what I expected, Envoy Nash, she admitted grudgingly. May I suggest we continue this conversation on equal footing? Kellen gestured toward the center platform, still glowing in the distance. Zavara's mandibles twitched in what might have been amusement. You propose a draw. Bold for someone in your position. I propose cooperation, Kellen countered. Together we might learn something neither of us could discover alone. Before she could respond, a shuddering pulse ran through the simulation. Platforms began to disintegrate, the void below them darkening ominously. System malfunction, Zavara hissed, her battle-ready posture returning instantly. The neural interface is destabilizing. Kellen felt it too, a painful pressure building behind his eyes as the simulation struggled to maintain coherence. Can we disconnect? Not safely, she replied, leaping to his platform as hers crumbled away. Direct neural disengagement during instability could cause permanent damage. Then we need to reach the center, Kellen said, pointing to the still intact glowing platform. That's the exit point, isn't it? Zavara nodded, her exoskeleton now pulsing with warning patterns. The path is collapsing too quickly. Even I cannot make those jumps in time. Kellen studied the disintegrating landscape, calculations running through his mind. Together, we can. What? I'll create a bridge, you create our path. He held out his hand, a gesture vexury rarely used with other species. Trust me, Commander. After a moment's hesitation that felt like an eternity, Zavara grasped his outstretched hand. Her touch was surprisingly warm through the simulation interface. Now, focus, Kellen instructed. Imagine solid ground connecting these platforms. I'll handle the structure, you guide our direction. He closed his eyes again, concentrating on the sensation of solid matter forming beneath their feet. The neural interface responded, creating a narrow bridge extending from their platform. Simultaneously, Zavara's mind shaped their trajectory, guiding the bridge's formation toward the center platform in the most efficient path possible. Together, they moved forward, a perfect melding of human creativity and vexury precision. Where platforms crumbled before them, their combined will forged new paths. The void clawed at them, system errors manifesting as howling winds and gravitational distortions, but they pressed on. The interface is reading our collaborative intent, Zavara observed, her voice tight with concentration. This shouldn't be possible across species. Maybe that's why it's destabilizing, Kellen suggested, fighting to maintain the bridge as another shock wave rippled through the simulation. We're forcing it to process patterns it wasn't designed for. They were halfway to the center when disaster struck. A massive system surge shattered their constructed bridge, separating them. Kellen found himself clinging to a tiny fragment of platform, Zavara similarly stranded several meters away. Between them and the center platform lay nothing but the consuming void. We cannot bridge this gap, Zavara called, her usually confident voice edged with something Kellen hadn't heard before, fear. We don't need to, Kellen replied, an idea forming. Commander, do you trust me? Her compound eyes studied him for a long moment. I do not distrust you, human. From a vexury, that was practically a declaration of friendship. Then jump toward me, he said. With everything you have. She hesitated only briefly before launching herself across the void with powerful legs. As she sailed through the empty space, Kellen focused his entire will on a single thought, weightlessness. The simulation responded. Zavara's trajectory slowed, her body seeming to float rather than fall. Using the momentary suspension, Kellen leapt from his own platform, intercepting her midair. The momentum of their collision sent them spinning toward the center platform. Now, he shouted as they tumbled through space. Focus on solidity. Together, they concentrated on the sensation of mass and substance returning. The simulation solidified around them just as they crashed onto the center platform in a tangled heap of human and vexury limbs. The glowing surface recognized their presence, and the world dissolved once more, this time returning them to the physical training chamber on Nexus Station. Kellen found himself lying on the floor, neural harness askew, breathing heavily. Beside him, Zavara was already rising to her feet, though her movements lacked their usual fluid grace. The vexury warriors stood in stunned silence, mandibles slack with astonishment. Interface systems disengaged, announced an automated voice. Warning, unexpected protocol variations detected. System diagnostic recommended. Zavara extended a clawed hand to Kellen. After a moment's surprise, he took it, allowing her to pull him effortlessly to his feet. The human performed adequately, she announced to her warriors, though her tone carried none of its former disdain. The commander was an excellent teacher, Kellen replied diplomatically. The warriors exchanged glances, clearly unsure how to interpret what they just witnessed. Leave us, Zavara ordered. The warriors complied immediately, filing out of the chamber with military precision. When they were alone, Zavara's posture relaxed slightly. What you did in there, creating a bridge between minds, it's unprecedented. Our scientists have attempted cross-species neural synchronization for decades without success. Perhaps they approached it as a technical problem rather than a matter of perception, Kellen suggested. Humans excel at adaptive thinking because our history forced us to. Your species' brief history is both your weakness and your strength, Zavara acknowledged. You haven't had time to become rigid in your methods. Kellen smiled. Was that almost a compliment, Commander? Her exoskeleton flushed momentarily with a color he couldn't interpret. It was an observation. And a potentially useful one for my report to the council. And what will that report say? Zavara was silent for a moment, her compound eyes studying him with new intensity. That humans may be more valuable as collaborators than subordinates. That perhaps there is wisdom in youth as well as in experience. She gestured toward the exit. I believe we have much to discuss before your meeting with the council tomorrow, Envoy Nash. Including your background in special reconnaissance, which you neglected to mention in your diplomatic profile. Kellen laughed softly. Just as you neglected to mention your position as head of Vexery Neurological Research. Her mandibles clicked in genuine amusement. Perhaps we understand each other better than either of us anticipated. As they left the training chamber, Kellen felt a subtle shift in the air between them, not quite alliance, not quite friendship, but something new and undefined. A bridge being built between two species who had seen each other only as competitors until now. I believe, Zavara said as they walked side by side through the crystalline corridors of Nexus Station, that the council might be persuaded to reconsider the Epsilon mining rights, under proper joint oversight, of course. Of course, Kellen agreed, matching her measured stride. And Earth might be willing to share some of our adaptive neural interface techniques, strictly for scientific purposes. The Vexery commander's exoskeleton shimmered with that same royal purple he'd seen earlier, a color he now suspected indicated satisfaction, perhaps even respect. You know, Envoy Nash, she said, in Vexery culture, those who survive a neural crisis together are considered Kavith, soul witnesses. It's a bond not easily dismissed. We have similar concepts, Kellen replied. Though we generally seal them with something less dramatic than neural interfaces. Perhaps a drink? Humans and your chemical relaxants, Zavara clicked, but her tone was light. I suppose there are worse ways to continue negotiations. As they entered the diplomatic quarter, passing bemused representatives of a dozen different species, Kellen reflected that sometimes understanding began not with grand gestures or formal treaties, but with a simple, unexpected connection, and the willingness to fall together rather than stand apart.